Okay? Once you've done the lesson of the day, you're not done. You're still roaming around the classroom monitoring. A good technique for monitoring is a technique called praise, prompt, and leave. A teacher says, I praise, prompt, and leave every student, in my classroom during guided practice. If I have a slow starter, I go over to them first and I say, Bob, I love the way you wrote your name in the header. Please get right to problem number 1. And then I move on and talk to someone else. And if I see something that's not quite adding up, or someone who's not doing their check answer work appropriately, things like that, because check answer, they should show their work, then I correct them on that and move on, so on and so forth. Another thing you're doing during this is you are checking for understanding of the concept, because what is the one statement I want you to remember? Is this thing on? What is the one statement I want you to remember? It's not about getting the answer right. It's all about your students communicating mastery of the concept to you. One of the things you can do is you can record grade level standards attainment by going around and saying, hey, your check answer, you got this right. Tell me the steps you did to get this right. And while you do that, if you build a chart that looks like this, where you have the essential standards across the top, you have the names of your students down the side, the date that a student communicates to you, understanding or attainment of number sense 1.01 or whatever the standard is or whatever the concept is, you write the date. If you do that a little bit each day, hypothetically on this classroom, algebra and functions 1.4 is a concept the majority of the students don't have yet. This is something I need to work on as the teaching professional in the classroom. I need to ensure they communicate to me mastery of that. Does that make sense how to implement this in the classroom? It's very simple, takes just a little bit each day during guided practice. You walk around with a clipboard, it's going to produce tremendous results in your classroom. All right, the first component in our curriculum is the direct instruction, then it's the guided practice. The third component is back on the front right side, it is the homework. Homework is assigned 4 days a week, generally speaking, in our curriculum. It's really there to teach the students the responsibility of taking home an assignment, completing it, and bringing it back. And also to involve the parents. One of the things you will notice, now check this out. Notice on this lesson sheet right here, we're introducing coins, but notice coins do not go home. I think everybody can see this. Coins do not go home for homework. We do not send a new concept home for independent study. That is a setup for failure, I believe. I distinctly remember learning new concepts in the classroom early in the day. Yeah, I have this, and then by the time I get home and after dinner and try to do homework on it, I couldn't remember how it was done. Instead, with our curriculum, now if you watch this, coins are introduced, you'll see coins practice and guided practice today. Now the next day there's a new lesson, but I'll continue to see coins practice, and as a matter of fact, I'll see coins practice guided by the teacher for exactly a week before it finally shows up in homework. And then once it's there, we will keep it in front of them through the rest of the school year as well. And it allows for a higher percentage of attainment of the concepts by your entire classroom when we strategize and pattern our curriculum this way. So that's the main reason for homework, why it's there for the independent studies. Now, in grades 2 through 6, every 5th day, every Friday, if you will, it doesn't have to be on Friday, but every 5th day, here's what we have available for you. Every lesson that's a multiple of 5, lesson 5, 10, 15, 20, so on and so forth, it's what I affectionately call critical thinking lessons. It's concepts such as probability, estimation, graphing, as you can see right here, so on and so forth. Notice there's no homework in this section. We usually use the real estate on the page to further develop the concept that we're introducing. There's a reduced volume of guided practice on these 5th lessons because the intent is on the same day to do the test. It's a brief 20-problem quiz to do it on the same day. Okay? There's a little bit more that we're throwing at you this day, but it certainly produces tremendous results. On the back of our tests, we have an outstanding merge of literacy and mathematics. We have a multi-paragraph story on one side, And a higher level critical thinking strategy of extracting pertinent information out of the story to answer the specific questions. And it always drives towards your students writing their own story problem, because one of the best ways to demonstrate mastery of a concept is for a student to write their own story problem. You will see. Now let me give you a tip on this. This happens to be on the back of the test, but you need not make it a part of a test, because in some instances this is a difficult concept for your students to understand. What many people, there's one place that's using this as a supplement, and a teacher told me that on Fridays she does the critical thinking lesson, lesson 15. She gives the brief quiz, but she saves this for Monday morning because there's no homework to go over on that day, because there's no homework on the 5th lesson. So she does this as a group activity on Mondays. One of the nice things about our curriculum is you can cater it to the specific needs within your classroom. Okay? Now your teacher edition has lots of information that's beneficial if you take the time to go through it in the introduction section. There's also activities in the back of the book that we strongly recommend you consider using. There's extractable manipulative pages if you don't happen to have certain manipulatives, like a clock face if you're in one of the lower grades, so on and so forth. And then we have, the thing I really want to draw your attention to is a chart in your teacher edition in the introduction section that looks like this. It's called a score distribution and error analysis chart. Now here's how this is to be used in the classroom. You use it on test days. Every time there's a test, you make a copy of this out of your teacher edition. We authorize permission to do that. And on this particular test, hypothetically, after I have scored the tests, I give a number to my students, and I can see that students 2, 6, 9, and 14, all of them scored 100% today. Okay? And for example, hypothetically, student number 4 missed 5. If you do this is great in parent-teacher conferencing, because you can show a parent how their son or daughter is scoring relative to the rest of the class while still providing anonymity to the rest of the classroom. Your son or daughter is number 7, here's how they're scoring compared to everybody else, and here's how I'm grading them, and so on and so forth. More importantly, I believe, is what you do on this side of the page. Anytime someone missed problem number 1, you make a hash mark up here. Now when I have graded all the pages hypothetically on this week's test, I can see that the concept that was tested in problem number 20 is a concept the majority of my students didn't get. This is your reteaching opportunity, because by the time a concept lands on a test in Excel Math, they have been exposed to it on average for 3 weeks. Guided by your instruction for 3 weeks. So it's clearly not getting in. This is what I affectionately call the canary in the mine shaft. Hey, that's metaphor number 2, by the way. Metaphor number 2 for you visual learners. There's your canary in the mine shaft. Now here's what I mean by that. It's an old expression. Literally in the olden days, miners would take a cage of canaries with them down into the mine. They would use the canaries to detect poisonous gas. While they were working, they would occasionally look at the cage of canaries. If they ever saw 2 dead birds, what did they do? They got out, because they knew there was poisonous gas. This is your canary in the mine shaft. This concept is not landing in long-term memory. Now remember, canaries can be positive or negative. Look at problem number 15. Everybody aced it in my class. Let's say hypothetically, in your grade level, let's say problem number 15, you look at it and it's long division. Yes, my students know long division. I'm going to go back to that one chart, the concept chart. I'm going to write today's date that they're demonstrating proficiency on that. Let's say that problem number 20 hypothetically is multiplication of fractions. Oh man, what am I going to do about that? I need to reteach that. Now, what do you do with this information? Because let me remind you of another goal. The goal is not assessment. The goal is mastery of the concepts. My students have mastered multiplication of fractions. They're struggling with, or pardon me, they've mastered long division. They're struggling with multiplication of fractions. What you do with that in our curriculum, you continue to introduce the next lesson of the day, but while you're doing that, in either homework or guided practice, start watching for a multiplication of fraction problem. And when you see one in the next week or so, say, you know what, let's do this one together. And you do a little more direct instruction during that time. And the time you take to do that, you look for a long division problem and say, we don't have to do this problem today in your guided practice. So you cater the practice work to the canaries in your mine shaft. Okay? The ones that are alive, the ones that are dead, and it varies, it ebbs and flows all the way through the school year. Does that make sense to you?